Hello, everybody. I'm Deepa Karthik, and I'm a principal TPM for Amazon Devices, which falls under the Lab 126 umbrella. I work out of the Mumbai Dev Center, and I am super excited to talk to you over the next about 30 minutes, and I welcome you all to this session. Some of you will be able to relate to it. Some of you will be able to take away something, but hopefully you have a useful session at the end of it all. I wanted to kind of start off by giving you a sneak peek into who I am. Considering that I am a stranger to most of you, I thought you'll be able to kind of relate better if you know a little bit about me. By and large, I consider and see myself as a problem solver, somebody who likes to fix things. And I loved math and I loved science while growing up and logic. And that kind of was a natural segue into engineering for me. There was always a climate of academics back at home, and that helped channel my interests, specifically towards tech and engineering more. I love traveling. That's a passion that I would want to continue once this pandemic is over. I love the Indian cricket team, both men and women, specifically wanting to support women more and empower them. I love music and dance in general, but classical dance is something that's closer to me. I am from Chennai, but we kind of moved around a lot when I was young. I've stayed in different cities, worked in different cities, Mumbai, Kolkata, Hyderabad, Bangalore, and a few other towns that are smaller. But then overall, if you think about where my heart is still close, if there's an IPL match happening, I'm kind of still supporting CSK. And when I was young and when I moved cities, something that I learned early was perspective and adaptability. And the reason I quote that here is because I've taken that forward over both my academic stint as well as my professional work stint. I went on to do my bachelor's in computer science from BITS Pilani. This laid the foundation of who I am today. It taught me a lot in the academic front, but also taught me a lot of life skills and in terms of managing time, managing priorities, and most importantly, managing people. In the next slide, I want to talk about what tech really meant to me while growing up, right? Okay, so for most of you who were kind of growing up in the 80s and 90s, you'll be able to relate to this. For others who are not able to relate to it, you know how old I am, right? So the first picture is that of an antenna that I would kind of swirl around to get proper signal to the TV, right? The second one is an analog telephone, one of the first that I actually kind of dismantled to my parents' dismay to see how it worked. The third, I think all of you know what that is. It's an audio cassette. Again, something that I was fascinated about, that I would kind of, again, open up, figure out the tape, and especially the reading part of it, right? The fourth picture is a tiny digital, probably the first digital device that I held, which was this tiny piano unit that would emanate these shrill notes, but still something that I was super proud of. The last one, you would have guessed what it is. It's a VCR. You actually had these cassettes that you would play. And more often than not, we would kind of, my father and I would kind of open it up to see what the internals looked like. We would have to dust it off. It would accumulate a lot of dust. But in doing so, I kind of wanted to, be in this electrical world. And because at that time, it was not computers, right? It was more about this world that was more prominent. Then I kind of started into the world of programming with my first exposure onto Logo. I don't know how many of you have used it in the past. It's kind of a nostalgic symbol for me, which is like a tiny triangle that would go forward and backward. And then you would actually move it around, program it to move around and form shapes. Then was kind of exposed to this fascinating world of video games, right? It started off with Prince of Persia on a PC. Then the actual video game units, right, that you would actually chuck a cassette in. Played a lot of Super Mario, Pac-Man, Contra. That was the exposure I had to the world of digital, right? And this was a phase where there was no internet. There's not a lot of prominence in internet in India. I think it was still kind of up and coming elsewhere, but not in India. So the last row is my foray into programming, right? Started off with BASIC, which was probably the only programming language that we were taught back then. Then went on to have some hands-on experience on assembly language programming, specifically on 8086, and a few other advanced ones later. And then obviously, right, C and C++ was something that was taught, learned by probably all engineering students, all science and computer science students at that point in time. And from here on, I think the programming languages expanded, the learning curve also equally expanded. And the reason I wanted it here is, as I said, some of you will be able to relate to it, but also kind of appreciate what we had then and then how the journey began for me. I'd like to call this section the middle. I do not want it to be a resume walkthrough for me. Interested folks can go to LinkedIn and check it out. But specifically, what I learned from each of my professional stints at different organizations, and more importantly, from the people in those organizations, and how it molded me into who I am today. I will also draw a parallel to my personal life at the same time, because I know that challenging aspects of work-life balance is something that we do discuss quite often in multiple forums today. So I probably can help preempt some of the questions you might have towards the end through this presentation a little bit. I started off with HP Labs, Hewlett Packard Labs, way back in 2003 as an intern. And this was my first foray into the work environment. And so I was part of a text-to-speech synthesis team, worked on a paper that was later presented at a language consortium in Portugal. So I had this insight into what research meant quite early on. So this was a vivid introduction into how a foundation in science actually kind of paved way to better innovations and from a company standpoint, right? And it showed how you could actually do 50 experiments, and all those 50 experiments could fail. The probability was pretty high of that failing. But then you continue to make those minor tweaks and you're at it, right? And then you go ahead and experience the sweet joy of success at maybe like the 85th time, right? A lot of perseverance and a bunch of super talented people, right? I worked with language scientists, professors from eminent institutes, and I could see the level of commitment each of them had. So in 2003, drawing parallel to where I was in my personal life, still in college, still very much free, kind of trying to learn a lot, and that was the phase. In 2004, I joined Oracle. This was basically, I joined the company in Bangalore. I joined as an engineer and worked on their ERP suite, right? Specifically on supply chain and later on financials. This is where I experienced a proud moment of writing code and having that satisfaction and gratification of it, rolled out to production and an end consumer using it, right? The feeling was unbelievable. It was actually a business in Europe that used it. And in this stint, and you could see why there is that assembly line picture there, is because it taught me how the theory of what I learned in SDLC, I could witness it, right? There is design, there is development, there's implementation, there's production, and then there's post-production. And I had a chance to get my hands dirty in each of these units. I also had an opportunity to go and set up a data center in one of the banks. And not many people get it that early in their careers, right? But I did have that opportunity. Went and set up those. Uh, Cloud wasn't there yet, right? So they were these racks that you would set up, install your code on it, run it, and then get these 1 a.m., 2 a.m. calls just because something broke, right? And then you understand why that broke and what you could have done better. So personal front, I think, yeah, I mean, kind of entering, I got married and the responsibilities were a little different. I had to manage time a little better than what I was doing earlier. I couldn't actually sit and write code for maybe like 12, 13 hours at a stretch. Kind of had to take those breaks and get back to it, right? Um, Okay, so this is a bit that I am super proud about, super excited about. I joined Amazon in 2007 as an engineer. Went on to manage an engineering team and form a field test team for the Kindle product. And I straight away could see how this organization was different. I was probably like I think a 30th or 35th employee of the Chennai Dev Center. People who know about the size of the Chennai Dev Center today can appreciate how early that was, right? And I was one thing that struck me was how hands-on everybody in the company was. And I'm not just talking about engineers. I'm talking about managers. I'm talking about VPs, SVPs, how hands-on they were and how driven they were to solve a customer problem. So when I joined, and probably about like 10 days in, I was handed over the prototype of the first Kindle device. Um, uh, it kind of was like trying to think, what is this device exactly? Because ebook readers weren't a thing back then, right? And I was told, hey, this is super confidential, and this was my exposure to a confidential project per se, right? Um, and kind of went on to work on different um, uh, generations of the Kindle device over the course of the 4 years that I stayed with Amazon. It was also refreshing to see how Amazon was different in terms of adoption of open source tech, right? Now I think it's very common. Everybody does it, but way back it was not. It was not very common for big companies to pick up open source and kind of experiment with it. I had a chance to. So earlier, I was pretty much working on Java all through. In Oracle, I actually worked on this programming language called Dev 2K, Developer 2000. Not something that I would recommend. But coming to Amazon, I had a chance to pick up Ruby and Python and experiment with different data repositories like MySQL, and I think there was a lot of freedom, right, for engineers, and it continues to be so even today. Um, and this was also, I'd like to quote this instance, right? This was also the first time I got the question mark email. Now it's very popular, the question mark email. But way back, I didn't know what it was. I got this email from my VP with a question mark. And then I'm like trying to think, what is this? And then in the trail mail, I could see Stephen Kessel and Jeff Bezos kind of asking a question as to why a specific blog wasn't delivered, right? And that showed me how hands-on these people are. They're actually testing products. These are leaders, industry leaders, and they're not happy that out of the 100 runs they did, one run didn't meet the criteria, right? And so I think, and I do have to talk about the managers, right? I learned a lot from people within Amazon. One was the tech part of it, which was great, but also I think I kind of saw the first woman leader in action. It wasn't very common way back, right? And I learned a lot on how attention to detail oriented she was, as well as how much she appreciated what the team did and always had the team's backs, right, which was super important, and which is something that I see as kind of helped me, take it away and implement it in my career. So my key learnings from this stint was how one goal definition, and the goal was deliver books in 60 seconds, right? That was one goal that kind of became sub goals for multiple teams, right? When I talk about teams, if you think about the Kindle world, we had the device and firmware, we had periodical and book ingestion, we had periodical and book delivery, fulfillment, as you used to call it. Then there is this entire commerce piece, right? You would have to go and buy the book. So there's this entire commerce piece to it. And how every team, and this was a multi-geography team that was working on it, but were able to successfully deliver because they had one single goal in mind, which was to deliver books in 60 seconds. The second learning I had was how practicing the principle is very important, right? And now LPs, Amazon's LPs are quoted left, right, and center everywhere, right? But I could see even back then, which is 14 years before, I could see people actually inherently having it in their DNA and basically executing it every day, right? I remember the thought, and basically also like the feedback loops that would go around, right? Like from the customer's input to how it goes back to a product to how it goes back to engineering and how you would continue to solve for it. I've taken these principles forward. I've kind of gone ahead and implemented it in my other stints as well, and it works seamlessly, right? On the personal front, this is when kind of I had my first kid. I'm trying to navigate these challenges of being a new mother, a new manager, and like kind of learning a lot, right? Obviously, you fail in some cases, but then you pick up, you learn. That's where this managing and prioritizing comes into play, right? And I kind of learned on the job, learned on the role as a new mother, and at some point, I'd like to think I'm successful in both, right? Um, then I kind of went ahead and decided to take a break for a year, personally because I wanted to spend more time with my kid, and also because I wanted to go ahead and explore some non-work interests that I had, right? And I thought it's a good time. I was moving from Chennai to a new city, so why not make use of this opportunity, right? This phase of 2012 and on, I'd like to call it as identifying an opportunity and taking it, right? So when I took the break, I later realized that I really wanted to get back because I was missing. I had this itch of wanting to solve problems again and being challenged. But at the same time, I didn't want to get back full time. When I say full time, I didn't want to actually go to work every single day and do it, right? Um, so I saw this gap in the startup world where there were point problems to be solved, right? But either they didn't have the capital backing to go ahead and hire good talent for it, or they were still kind of experimenting on it being a pilot, right? And nobody wants to hire a full team to kind of go ahead and do it. So I started this tech and product consultancy. I've worked for Redbus, Groupon, Zoomcar, an Indonesian startup named Sepulsa, and this was not a consultation where you write some 6 pages of white paper and give it, right? But this was hands-on problem solving. So in some cases, I've gone ahead and did the design for them. In some cases, I've gone ahead and done product roadmap definition, right? Like in some cases, I've gone ahead and identified team structure formation, right? Hey, do I need a UX designer? Do you specifically need a product team here or not, right? And gone ahead and solved these problems. In some cases, I did write code, but this was a phase when I was kind of slowly stepping away from hands-on coding because I was interested in also the strategic 30,000 foot level of doing things, right? And what it brought to me was that, how important networking was. This was not something that I would go and pitch ideas, right? It was just word of mouth. People would know that somebody in Redbus would tell somebody in Groupon would tell somebody, right? And this is how I got these point problems to solve. And something else that I learned from this was how important speed was, right? This is 2012, 2013 when the startup market in India was booming. right? And you had to actually roll out products, fail fast, learn from it, and alter your product, right? And that cycle had to be done quickly. So this stint in the startup world taught me that a lot, right? And how the same business in different geographies meant different things. So when I worked with a fintech startup in Jakarta, the pure geography and people culture kind of mattered a lot in solving problems. I couldn't do it the same way I would do for the Indian market, right? Um, so I think overall, it gave me an exposure to multiple domains like travel, e-commerce, fintech, and so on and so forth. And at a personal level, I was able to multitask, right? I got the best of both worlds. I could be at home taking care of my kid, but at the same time solve these problems with arrangements of, hey, I'm going to drop in once a week, right? And when I spoke to other women who had taken a break, they and I think this is something that I would like to think I gave back, right? And I've seen people actually pick this up and start doing similar stints also outside, right? Um, but then at some point, I started yearning for more challenges. I think this was great. This is going well. And that was all. I think that's what the next stint is all about, right? Um, so I'd like to call this Amazon 2 or my second stint. I became a boomerang. A boomerang is somebody who comes back after taking a break or going somewhere else. I think it's an industry-wide term. Um, and I had moved to Mumbai when an old acquaintance from my earlier team reached out and spoke about how they wanted to set up this dev center in Mumbai, right? And it was deja vu all over because I remember how we started small in Chennai as well. And I always knew that if I were to get back full time, it would always be with Amazon, right? I couldn't think of going anywhere else. And I was also at a phase in my personal life where my kids were older. They were a little more independent, and I could actually get back and kind of start experimenting to see whether it works coming back full time. So when I did go to the interview, so you do get interviewed fully, right, when you're coming back. I was given a single line statement of a problem, just one line, because of confidentiality reasons, right? They couldn't disclose more. And that was enough for me, right? That kind of kindled my interest to a large extent because I knew if Amazon was taking a bet of setting up a new dev center, this is going to be exciting, right? So I did join back, and Amazon had changed, right? It had grown exponentially since the last time I was there. Teams were bigger, uh, problems and opportunities were larger, uh, processes were stronger, right? And overall, the innovation index was super high, right? It was like a million startups within one huge company, right? Um, and this stint, it's still a confidential program, so I can't talk a lot about the products that I've rolled out. But what I will do is talk about specifically the learnings and also about the TPM role. If there are a bunch of program managers, tech folks on the call, you may benefit from this, right? So I had a chance to be a part of a PRFAQ or a working backwards document in this stint, right? I was the fourth member of this engineering team, of the entire team in Mumbai, and we are going about 70 plus and strong right now, right? I had a chance to work on a PRFAQ to contribute to it, if not lead it. I was able to work with leaders, when I say leaders, senior execs, and work on this thing called as a 0 to 1 problem, right? What 0 to 1 means that you're taking a concept and you're actually making it into a customer product, right? I think, again, this may be an industry-wide term, not specific to Amazon. So I witnessed a concept take shape from a white paper to an experiment to an evaluation, to validation, tech validation, and then ultimately become a product for the end customer. And I was super, and I'm still super excited and proud of that fact, right? Um, so as a TPM, what did I do, right? As I said, it was a clean slate. There was nothing to start off with. So in some ways, that's good, right? It's easier. I had an opportunity to set up processes and mechanisms that made sense for the program at every phase of its evolution. I got an opportunity to rub shoulders with industry experts, right? Senior tech and business leaders within Amazon, and solve unique problems and launch both a device, like devices as well as services, right? Which is not something you get to do often. Um, and what's most amazing is, and I keep coming back to people because I think you can talk about product, tech, a lot of these things, but ultimately, what inspires me at least, right, and maybe it's the case for some of you, is that people will come together and synergy gets formed, right, and to deliver, irrespective of their roles, irrespective of their levels, right. They come together and they want to solve a problem, and that quotient was super high in this team. So I'd like to call this slide the 9-year Amazon journey, right? The first section are the 4 generations of Kindle device that I worked on. In one form or the other, predominantly the team in Chennai did work on the periodical ingestion, but I had a chance to solve problems and support different kinds of devices in different verticals also. And one instance that comes to mind is how when we launched the first Kindle, we were all cooped up, 10 people in the Chennai office within a conference room, and see Jeff Bezos launch the device in front of the press, right? And I knew that Kindle had become big when I went to the US, and I'm standing in the security line to go. And generally, they would ask you to remove your mobile phones or your wallets and put it onto a tray. And this time they were like, please remove your Kindles, right? So that I kind of knew that Kindle had made it big. And this was just like probably like 4 or 5 months into the Kindle launch, right? The first one. The second part of my stint, as I said, I'm a part of the Lab 126 team. We are called the Connectivity Solutions Group. And the mission is to bring low-cost, ubiquitous network connectivity to things, right? And to people using edge compute and networking, right? Those are kind of the verticals we use. We're leveraging a lot of AWS technologies. There's a lot of expertise within the team, as well as wireless networking, device and application software. And it's basically an amalgamation of different tech and different roles, right? We have research scientists, we have applied scientists, we have data scientists, we have engineers, software development engineers, system development engineers. So it's an amazing team to be part of across both Sunnyvale and here. As I said, we should, like, hopefully I can talk to you about the product specifically sometime in the near future. But till then, I'll leave you with this thought. So this slide, I'd like to call it Deconstructing the Professional Me, right? This is how I am, how I've become over the last 16 odd years of my journey. I've grown into a generalist because I have been in different roles. I've been in different domains. And that comes and takes me to becoming the person who can connect the dots, right? Some of it comes through experience. Some of them is probably inherent. But I find myself connecting the dots, bringing a lot of value there, and disambiguating, right? And probably that relates to the point number 4 also, right? Like keeping things simple, making it very clear to solve a problem. And problem solving is at the core for me, along with not just solve the problem short term, right, but long term. And there you would try to invent and simplify and bring in some innovation, right? More often than not, nothing is one woman effort for me, right? It's predominantly because of the team that you get to deliver. Um, and something that I've learned, right, is leaning in. What does lean in mean is asking for help. There used to be a time that I would think that, hey, I've been hired for a reason. I've been given this problem for a reason, and I'm expected to solve it, right? Yes, but not alone, right? Don't hesitate to ask questions. And I don't think in any of my stints across Amazon and otherwise, nobody has told me, hey, your question is wrong, right? Or your question is too simple, it's too trivial. No. If you have a question, get help, like get those answers and solve it. And at the end of it all, I think I realize that it's always a journey. You continuously have to keep yourself updated, both in terms of what's happening in the tech world, the non-tech world, personally, professionally, right? And like from the tech standpoint, there are a few blogs that you read, there are a few talks like TED talks that you get inputs from. A lot of inputs come in from within the team, within the organization, and that will be a journey that will continue, right? So, uh, yeah. So this slide, I call it my toolkit, right? And this is mine. Take it. You don't have to judge me for the things that I call out. It's just my journey. There's some learnings that I've learned that I'm sharing. You may or may not agree to it, but I think this has helped me, right? Break the assumptions. When I say break the assumptions, um, and to just quote an example, when I had my daughter, and when I was doing the startup consultation stint, people would hesitate to ask me to travel, right? I was consulting for I think I was in Bangalore, but there was these teams in Delhi, in Jakarta, in one case probably in Singapore, right? And people would hesitate to ask me to travel, right? So the point is, make it very evident on what you can and cannot do. Others do not have to make the decision for you, right? Have that conversation with your manager, your team, and make it very clear that I'm all for it, right? I enjoy doing this. And how I tackle my personal life is something that I'll take care, but do not um, take me out of the equation just because there is an assumption, right? Choose what works for you. I mean, I'll address this in both a tactical and a non-tactical front, right? Uh, if you're an early starter and you wrap up work early, do that and make it evident to your team that I will do this intersection time with the team, but then I have this timeline to follow. At a non-tactical level, I've taken a break. I've enjoyed it. It's helped me. I did lose something in terms of maybe a year of career progression, but then I stood to kind of gain much more by doing that. Right? Set your goals, both personal and professional, but specifically on the professional front. Nobody cares about your career uh, as much as you. I'm sure there are people, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to have managers who've been looking out for me. But you do have to set goals for yourself, right? And nobody's going to do it for you. And I'm not saying be aggressively ambitious. That's not what I'm saying. But look at, even if it's a longish goal, even if it's 6 years away, just have that sight within when you're planning your things. Prioritize and work smart, right? Um, so I've heard this from one of the senior leaders in Amazon, ruthless prioritization, right? Again, personal and professional front, work-wise, tech decisions-wise, prioritize long-term gains over short-term gains, and so on and so forth, right? And that's pretty much what I mean here in terms of how you prioritize. And it could be your week, your day. So just make sure that you got your prioritization right that works for you. Learn to switch on and switch off. Very important. I know you've heard it enough from people around, but it helps. At least helps me. like work is just a part of your life. I spend a lot of time with my kids, music, something that's very close to my heart. I play badminton, at least I tried to before the pandemic. Now, I not so much, but at least spend a couple of days in a week doing things that you love, right? Post work hours. Uh, so this is the last slide that I have, and I want to call out that no woman or man is an island, right? I wanted to recognize a lot of help that I've received from mentors and friends and family and community and teams on whose shoulders I stand on today, right? Um, and specifically, I want to talk about mentors and then pay some gratitude to my family, right? But uh, mentors, I always have the set of people whom I uh, trust to be my biggest critics, but at the same time also somebody whose judgment I believe in, right? Have those set of people you could brainstorm, you could both in terms of career as well as ideas, right? Like product ideas, tech ideas, that set, that group, and for me, as I said, right, I had some awesome managers within the organization itself who are great mentors to me. Apart from that, I have mentors outside the organization as well. Um, Family, I mean, yes, I think I've been fortunate enough to have like parents and my husband and my in-laws kind of support me the way they do today. Some of you may or may not have it, but I think what helps is, remember we spoke about switching on and switching off. When you do that, automatically it creates time to prioritize some of the give back that you do, and automatically you get that support from your family, right? Um, so I final a minute on the community bit, right? When I say community, I want to specifically talk about the women forums and the conversations that are happening both inside and outside the organization, right? We have forums within Amazon that's called Women at Amazon, Women in Tech. Um, Women in devices and wireless, and each of them has its own charter. But at the soul of it all, it's all about empowering women, and not just women. I think it's diversity, right? And how you actually make things better for them, and also sensitize the entire organization on these initiatives, right? So I think that's all I have for today's session. Thank you all for coming in. I know that there are some questions. I'm happy to kind of take them in right now, right? Um, I have a question from Divya. How do you think Amazon is different from other companies you've worked in? I think I briefly touched upon this, right? In the early days, when you are an engineer, you're thinking more about, hey, do I get to learn more, right? Do I get my hands dirty on different technologies? Yes. Today, even more so, right? Every team, it's amazing to see the kind of proof of concepts and evaluations that are happening across the company, and there are office hour sessions, there are tech talks, there are principals giving you guidance. So the support from a tech angle is immense to experiment, more importantly to make mistakes, right? Freedom is not freedom if you can't err, right? Which means that Amazon will never tell you don't do something because you will fail, right? And that is something that's worked immensely well for the teams that I've been a part of. And that's probably one of the reasons that we're able to kind of innovate so much more, right? Yeah, I mean, I think from a tech side of things, that is something that's very, very different from the other companies that I've seen. Yeah, I'll take the next. What could be the potential career path for software development engineers? Yeah, I think software development engineers, and not just for, I'll tackle this in two ways. One is software dev engineers, but when I say that, people who are not in this vertical should also think about forming parallels to what I'm saying, right? uh, Amazon encourages movement, right? So for SDE, you could start off as an SDE1, then you move on to the ladder of becoming a senior engineer, and then you have your own well-established vertical ladder, right? You become a principal engineer, you become a senior principal, you become a distinguished engineer, right? So that's a very well-established path, a lot of support within the organization to follow that. Um, Similarly, even if you're not a software development engineer, you're coming in as something else, or you are a software development engineer, but you want to become a TPM, you are an SDE, but you want to become a software development manager, right? So there are these lateral movements that you could actually keep making and explore other opportunities. I see a question from Lakshmi. I'm a PhD scholar from IIT Madras. Opportunities for me at Amazon. More roles are for UG graduates or experienced professionals. So, Lakshmi, I think becoming a PhD does expose you to a lot of specialization. I think there is a lot of value that we do appreciate people like you bringing in. I don't have a specific role in mind, but if you were to think about roles, there are these research scientists, applied scientists kind of area, which is a little more research oriented, that you can go to Amazon job site and kind of start searching there, if that helps. If there is a further conversation you want to have, you can reach out to probably some recruiters whom you've either worked in the past or maybe sync up offline. Right? Um, Jaya has a question. I'm returning to work after a career break. What is your advice on ramping back up after a break? Um, Ramping back up could mean many things. If you were a techie in the past, yes. And if you want to continue to be a techie or a hands-on engineer, you need to upgrade yourself, right? Upgrade again could mean two things. You take courses or you become hands-on. I think considering like technologies like AWS, the cloud evolution of things, the amount of code you write has kind of gone down, but the knowledge of systems, like maybe you need to know a little more about what a lambda is, what an API gateway is, what a step function is, instead of maybe going into writing code itself. So that is one part that you need to upgrade yourself. If you're not a techie, maybe something else. But yeah, I think hopefully that answers your question. Anuradha has a question on, are there opportunities for front-end development at Amazon? How should I get started? Yes, there are web development engineers and front-end engineers in different teams. Again, Amazon Career website is a good place to start. You can go there, find out some roles that excite you, start the application process. If you still have questions, reach out to maybe the career group, or we can sync up offline if that's a space that you want to explore. All right, I think we're kind of running out of time. The stipulated 45 minutes, and I want to wrap it up at that time, right? And thank you all for coming in, and hope the session was useful. And yeah, have a good day and a great week ahead. Thank you.